Jonathan? It's showtime. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to ROA Headquarters, Reserve Organization of America Headquarters, for our first Reserve Education Forum for 2022. We're really glad to have all of you in the room here with us today, as well as those of you who are out there in the streamland. Welcome. Welcome to Washington, D.C. Housekeeping, please be sure your devices are silent. I know people from the Hill can't live without their devices at the ready, but please silence them. And we have some reduced COVID restrictions, so you do not need to put your mask back on after you eat. We do have handouts for you that you can take back. I know one-pagers are greatly coveted over on the Hill, and we hope that you will find this information to be helpful, and please reach out for any additional information that you may like. Our goals for today are to provide some insight on how the lack of access to government-paid dental insurance for these drilling Army reservists directly reduces dental readiness and thus our national security. We're also going to highlight differences between how the active component maintains dental readiness and the variety of fixes that our reservists are expected to kind of deal with and go through to make sure that their dental readiness is maintained. The key takeaway for those of you from the Hill is around HR3512, Healthcare for Our Troops Act. And we hope that you will take this back and that your member will support this piece of legislation. We began planning for this REF back in October, and our world has changed greatly in the intervening 6 months. And the need to have reservists who are medically ready and dentally ready to deploy on a moment's notice is heightened right now based on current world events. So this has real-world deployable implications for the drilling reservist, and I hope that everyone will understand the heightened importance of this particular piece of legislation in today's world. To welcome you to ROA Headquarters, where we are now celebrating our 100th year, I'd like to introduce Major General retired Jeff Phillips, who will give a welcome from headquarters.
Thank you, General. Well, good afternoon, everybody. And to those of you who are in the room enjoying some good food, and those of you who are dialing in, as it were, deciding not to be with us in person, parking being what it is in Washington, and now, of course, traffic management being what it is after the State of the Union. It's a real pleasure to have you here to discuss an important topic. We've got some great panelists with us who will be introduced at length a little later on, but Colonel Scott Blum, Colonel Zaschel from the Army, General Wilmoth, and ROA's own Legislative Director, Jonathan C., a serving Air Force Reserve Captain. You know, this issue of dental readiness is not new. In fact, in Desert Shield and Desert Storm 3 decades ago, a war in which I served as a young captain in the Army, the total Army was experiencing dental readiness problems, but the reserve components, the reserve and the guard, really had their hands full. In fact, an Industrial College of the Armed Forces report a year after the war ended in 1991, the report is dated 92, quote, for example, an Army Times article featured the story of a reservist at Fort Campbell, Kentucky, who had to be taken to the operating room to remove several badly decayed teeth. At other sites, there were stories of reserve and guard soldiers whose teeth fell out with the mere touch of a dental instrument, and many who had to have all of their teeth removed because of advanced dental decay or periodontal disease. So the situation is not new. Certainly the picture has improved in 30 years. Back then, lack of readiness, or what we call Class 3 problems, were about 22% of the Army Reserve and the Guard, less so in the active force for reasons we'll go into here. But we still have issues where the Army Reserve and the Guard, among the ground forces, if you will, still lag the active component in dental health care readiness. And that's why we're here today to talk about that. We're going to talk about a great bill, HR3512, the Healthcare for Our Troops Act, and we thank Representative Andy Kim of New Jersey and his fellow sponsors for that bill that we support, of course. And how do we get around the issue? It's really, I think, personally, having been in the Army and the Army Reserve for quite some time, it's really not an issue of commanders. It's really not an issue of the military doing the right thing. They're trying. It's really an issue organic to and inherent in the nature of reserve service and its lack of access to preventative care, which is what this bill really addresses. So without further ado, as they say, I will gather my papers, I will quit the scene, and I will leave you to a great panel discussion. We look forward to your questions. Thank you for being here.
Would you
Gentlemen?
like to kick off the slide, the video for our 100th anniversary?
We have it?
We have a
High
short
drama.
video for Army Reserve's 100th anniversary. Better explain
Policies
what
were
ROA is
not
about.
built for a reserve and guard used at this level that we're seeing right now.
The Pentagon itself has told us the usage rate is not going to go down.
And so as we look towards the future, ROA has a critical role in supporting that citizen warrior.
We have the ability to walk here into the Minuteman building and talk about those issues with Congress.
We're right across from Congress. We're so close that we can be a primary advocate for all reserve component issues.
ROA appreciates the opportunity to testify today. I will address certain bills that apply in particular to our reserve force.
The country needs ROA. The serving reservists that are out there, they really do need ROA because we're their voice.
There is nobody else in the entire world who can handle those questions for our reserve and guard.
So again, welcome to ROA headquarters. I'm Major General Peggy Wilmoth. I am the Health Services Chair for ROA, and I'm former Deputy Surgeon General for the Army Reserve, currently Dean at UNC Chapel Hill School of Nursing. I'd like to introduce my other panelists here, Colonel Diana Zaschel, who's a commander of a dental company for the Army Reserve from LA, and Colonel Scott Blum, who is with the Air Guard from New Jersey. We do want you all to understand that we had input from the Marines and the Navy as well as the Air Force as we were planning this particular panel. So their voices were heard and were a part of this particular panel presentation as we crafted it. I want to go over a few slides with you to provide you with some data that are also in the handout that you have here. Again, we number 500,000 of our military, but we don't have the same access to dental care. That is on the individual service member. If they have employer-provided dental insurance, they can go to their dental provider and seek dental care through their regular provider like most of you all do. Many of our reservists do not have access to dental insurance through their employers. They can buy into TRICARE Reserve Select and buy dental care, but that comes out of their drill pay. And if you're an E4 and you're buying TRICARE Reserve Select, then that eats into your drill pay. So what the intent of 3512 is to have the government pay the insurance premium for the drilling reservist only, not their family, to have access to TRICARE Reserve Select. Just to reiterate a point that General Phillips just made, we had a 20% that were non-deployable, Desert Shield, Desert Storm, and beyond because of dental readiness. Now, you can get really wonky when you're starting to talk about dental care, dental insurance, and dental classifications. Those of you who are in the uniform understand dental class 1, 2, 3, and 4. Class 1 means that you have had a current dental exam, you have it annually, and you do not need any kind of treatment. Class 2 means that you require something non-urgent, but it's less likely that you will need any kind of dental care in the next 12 months. Why is 12 months important? You're getting ready to deploy. And therefore, the need for you to be evac'd back to the rear for dental emergency care is lesser. So that is why the dental class 2 exists. Class 3 means you need to have a tooth yanked. And we will share some stories today that having teeth pulled before deployment still occurs today in 2022. And then class 4, those who have not had their periodic exam. So commanders are rated on their class numbers of soldiers who are class 1 versus class 3 or 4. And that is part of a commander's evaluation of how well they're getting their soldiers to get whatever dental care and to provide documentation that they are either a class 1 or class 2. These are some statistics we pulled from 2014. These were in a publicly available, I don't have my glasses on, a publicly available publication. This is not secret data from any of the services. But as you can see, DRC 1 and 2 in 2014 for the Army Active Duty, Guard, and Reserve were 90, 85, and 64% respectively. DRC 3 and 4, meaning non-deployable, 10% on active duty, 15% reserve, and then 36% for Army Reserve. So that meant 36% of Army reservists who should have been able to deploy were deemed non-deployable because of lack of dental readiness. And then you can see the numbers again in Iraqi freedom and enduring freedom. The difference between those two, Army Guard and Army Reserve, in terms of deployability. There were some numbers recently on the homepage of health.mil. If any of you take a look at the health.mil website from DOD or DHA. And General Bagby just cited these stats about a week ago on that particular website, that studies have shown that soldiers have a greater than 75% chance of experiencing a dental emergency within 1 year if they are classified as dentally unready. 19% chance of experiencing a dental emergency within 1 year if they're dentally ready with minor disease, meaning a class 2, but less than 1% if they are a class 1. That is huge if you consider the fact if you're in a theater of operations and you have to evac a soldier way back for definitive care in the middle of a conflict. So again, this is not just for deployable, but it's also to maintain readiness once soldiers are in field and in the theater of operations. 16% of Guard and Reserve, roughly 130,000, have volunteered to serve. And those 130,000 do not have private health insurance. That's medical insurance plus dental insurance. Hundreds of thousands have insurance that's often very prohibitively expensive due to the copays. And we all know the cost of even employer-provided health insurance is going up drastically, as well as those who are on the Affordable Care Act and plans through their particular exchange. And our national security is impacted if we don't have soldiers who can deploy. So the solution, we believe, is HR3512, which would allow every member currently serving in the Reserve or Guard to sign up for TRICARE Reserve Select with no fees or copays. This would ensure then every single uniformed serving member would actively have access to health care that they can afford. And thus, some of the responsibility to maintain medical and dental readiness would shift from the service to the individual serving soldier. And they're all adults. So there should be no qualms about investing and taking care and ensuring your own health and wellness for your lifetime. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to my other panelists, my compadres here, and we're going to start off talking a little bit about sharing some personal stories. Colonel Zashel is a dentist who has her own private practice in the Los Angeles area. She's also commander of a dental unit. She is an RHRP provider through our current contract, so she has seen the downside of not having dental insurance in her own personal private practice, as well as from the perspective of being a commander. Colonel Zashel?
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for the introduction. I have been an RHRP provider for several years, and I decided to become a provider not because of the great reimbursement rate, but more to help our soldiers. So I noticed that a lot of people were not getting the exams that they needed and the care that they needed. From the aspect of being a battalion commander in the past to a company commander now. So I can tell you personal stories of some of what has impacted the soldiers. First and foremost, finding dentists that accept the program is few and far between. It doesn't have a large number of people, and probably because some of the reimbursement rates might be too low for them. Another issue is getting the appointments. Once you do find a doctor, sometimes the closest doctor is 30 to 50 miles away. And if you live in Los Angeles, that could be 2 hours. Some are as far as 90 or more. If you get into the Midwest states, it's more difficult. Also, the way the program works is, so if a soldier comes to me that needs an exam, we will provide them with an exam, blood pressure, and 4 bite wings, which is generally not sufficient enough to do a full assessment. So that's kind of a challenge. If you do find that they need, for example, an extraction or a root canal, you would have to send for an authorization for that. So now they're going back into the system and waiting for an appointment with a specialist, because even though I can do a root canal as a general dentist, the program will not allow me to do it because I'm not a specialist. And so then we have to find a specialist, and that could be even a larger distance and more time. One of the personal stories that I give is of a soldier who needed several extractions and a partial, was missing a number of teeth, and had a bunch of cavities. And that was a year ago, and I still haven't gotten the approval for the denture yet. And it's really hard on me, because I sit there, I try to fight for the soldiers. Because I'm in the military, for me, their care is more important to me. And I have gotten on the phone with the Rhrp program saying, the person needs care now, can't wait. And there's always a waiting list. Yes, we're going to get on it or something. Or even for myself, getting the Rhrp program, they try to send me to 40 miles away. And I know the dentist in my office that works for me is literally next door. And I'm like, can you look for this address? I have to actually tell them my address and my phone number in order to get to my location. Or they'll try to send you elsewhere. And unless you know that as a young soldier, they're just told to wait, and they keep told to wait. And, you know, I'm a little more assertive in getting my needs met, but a younger soldier can't do that. Having dental insurance will be very helpful to the soldiers, because it'll prevent having these bad problems. Not being able to get them the care. They don't provide the Rhrp program. So let's say were lucky enough to get an approval for a root canal. They can't get a crown. So the tooth is going to be lost anyways. Once you have a tooth that's greater than a third of the tooth structure lost to cavity, it's at very high risk for fracture. Once it's fractured, then you have to take the tooth out. So it's a difficult program, and I feel that if we provide dentists are all about preventative dental care. Go to the dentist twice a year, get your cleanings, and then we prevent any problems. Also, we provide a lot of oral hygiene, talk to them about their dietary care so that they could continue to have good dental health. Because if you don't have good dental health, you're not healthy. Surgeon General has said that. I'm going to leave the rest for questions, I think. Okay. I think that's good for now.
So maybe we need to go back and talk a little bit before we go on to you, Colonel Blum, about the process of how a soldier gets looped into the Rhrp program. So initially, every year you have to provide your dental readiness. You do an annual dental exam. For a soldier, for a PHA, physical health assessment, your unit will make an appointment for you to go to a place like Concentra or some other place that Rhrp has a contract with. You go for your physical care. You might get a half day's reserve pay or some kind of payment, because it's usually during the week and you've got to take off work and you go to get your physical. It's a health assessment that's no hands-on. It's just a bunch of questions and how are you, and a basic health assessment. Sometimes some blood is drawn. For the oral health care, it's the same process. And Colonel Zasha, do you want to talk a little bit about that process in the Army Reserve?
Yeah, as a commander, I'm not able to make their appointments, although I have gotten on the phone and did it anyways, but it's the soldier that has to do that. And one of the issue is that the person on the other side of the phone will say, well, plug them in somewhere which may not be close to their place of residence. Some of my soldiers don't have cars, and then they'll try to send them to places, even though I know dentists that are right by there that do accept the Rhrp program. So one is distance to some of them. The soldier is required to do it on their own. The unit cannot do it for them. So that puts in an added layer of difficulty, especially with a young soldier that's maybe 20 years old that really doesn't know how to run these programs and how these programs work, and you're waiting on the phone a long time for a lot of the programs. Once they've gotten the exam, if they find they have severe cavities or need extractions or something that will make them not deployable, then the dentist, myself, I plug it into the program. So they have a site that once you've done it, you put it into the program, you upload the x-rays, and if there's dental need, you have to write that. Then you have to follow up as the soldier to make sure, like, I need more work, can you send me somewhere? Because a lot of times, like I said, I'm still waiting for that guy, and it's been a year. So if you're not really active and trying to get it done, and then you can just be kept at a class 3 for a while. So it is a process.
And RHRP is the Reserve Health Readiness Program. It's a contract that's run out of Health Affairs inside DOD. I don't know if it's moved yet to DHA or not, but it's a contract. It's RHRP, Reserve Health Readiness Program. And there are different contractors that provide both the medical care or the dental care. An individual provider can decide to be a provider. I know my optometrist was doing it for a while, former Air Force. But again, there's a lot of paperwork on the side of the private practitioner who is required to do certain amounts of training and then provide all the uploads for each individual soldier that comes to see them. Eventually, they get their reimbursement. For some, they decide it's too onerous to maintain, to continue being a contractor. And then the soldier or the service member has certain responsibilities that they then have to fulfill once they do go get their PHA done or their dental exam done and provide it to their unit. And it's a very cumbersome process and a very lengthy one, and does not necessarily involve at all dental health promotion or prevention of cavities. It is mainly a fix, let's identify there's a critical need, and then eventually we'll get around to getting that soldier's critical need met. Anything else you want to add about that, Colonel Zashel? So I'm going to turn it over to Colonel Blum. He's going to talk a little bit about what is the RHRP program and what is the impact of dental health or lack thereof on readiness.
So good afternoon. Again, Scott Blum. I'm a serving National Guardsman out of the state of New Jersey, assigned from National Guard Bureau, and I am a dentist in private practice as well. So starting off, to discuss the disparity, readiness is about being available at a moment's notice to provide the service that you're trained for in the military. So regardless of what your job is in the military, you're either deployable or not deployable. The goal would be, obviously, to have as many people deployable as possible. The issue is, in disparity, in the active component, we have 100% of the care taken care of by the active component. All of the care is managed by their primary care managers, whether they have to send you downtown to a specialist, an osteopath, or a dentist specialist, would be basically determined by them. But 100% of that cost is borne by the U.S. government. The issue is, when you get to the National Guard and the Reserve, is that we provide for our own care at our own expense, and then we are judged by the same standard for readiness as the active component. We still fall under the Dental Readiness Class 1, DRC 2, DRC 3, and DRC 4 programs. The idea is that in a Guard unit or Reserve unit, your examination for your annual physical health assessment to determine your readiness for the next 12 months is not taken care of at the Guard unit. It is only assessed. So you go in, you have either provided a civilian documentation form through the Department of Defense standard form, DD 2813, and or you are getting an examination by the military dentist at that point. There will be no treatment, so you will just be reclassified. For example, the Dental Readiness Class 4 indicates that you're due for your annual dental examination. That means that it's been at least 12 months since you last had your dental examination. Under that, the dentist that you will be seeing in your civilian life, if you are lucky enough to have and pay for your own dental insurance, will have indicated on a DD Form 2813 what your health status is according to their assessment. Your military dentist will then reassess you. In some cases, with the reserves, it's every 3rd year, and in the Guard, it's every 5th year. Will reassess you to a military standardization. Obviously, the civilians don't necessarily have a readiness standard. They just have a health standard that they're going by. And to assess you under the military standard. At that point, you will be reclassified dental readiness 1, 2, or 3. If you're classified dental readiness 1 or 2, you are basically assuming that you've had your annual dental examination provided by the military and you're okay, which is not the case. So no preventive care has been done. Comprehensive examination has not been done. We're not taking a series of x-rays. We're not taking a significant amount of information from you. We're really just assessing your overall health condition. No different than the PHA, which is you have seen an osteopath for this. You've seen a cardiologist for that. And now we're assessing that and then re-asking the cardiologist or the osteopath what the likelihood of you breaking down on an appointment is going to be, and we kind of make that assessment whether or not you still belong in the military. Same thing's going on in dental. We're literally just looking at the status that you are right at this moment, having no idea for the past 3 to 5 years what your dental readiness standard was at that time, except for that one form provided by the civilian provider. And if you were lucky enough to have the civilian provider, you had care. So a soldier or an airman could actually go 3 to 5 years without any care at all and still have the annual dental examination through the military. Taking that amount of time would likely result in significant tooth loss due to decay or disease, gum disease. So looking at it from the perspective of a guardsman, I pay for an insurance in order to meet the current standard that the active component has to meet, and I have to do it through my financial obligation. So what we're looking at is the out-of-pocket cost for the guardsman is going to be significantly different than an out-of-pocket cost for an active component soldier or airman being treated downtown or through the clinics on base, through the military treatment facilities or dental treatment facilities on base. So to discuss then the disparity with the RHRP, within RHRP is more of an Army treatment issue. In the air, we are not authorized any care under RHRP. So even if we were to go get our dental examination through RHRP, the Reserve Health Readiness Program, we would still then be identified as dental readiness class 1, 2, or 3. And then we would still have to go to another dentist, a civilian private practice dentist, and then pay for the treatment that would be necessary under dental readiness class 2 or 3 in order to make us ready. So the RHRP for a air guardsman, air reservist, is merely an annual dental examination, which can pass as the 3rd or 5th year military examination. So the RHRP dentist is trained to the military standard to understand what readiness is. If the person is determined to be dental readiness class 3 and they happen to be Army Guard, Army Reserve, then they can actually get treatment through RHRP to render them class 2 or class 1 deployable. If you are an airman, Guard or Reserve, and you are determined to be class 3, you have to provide for your own care, which if I have to pay for an extraction, my out-of-pocket cost could be anywhere from $150 to $300. For a root canal post-core crown, in order to restore the tooth to full viability and lasting sustainability, it could be upwards of $2,000 to $3,000. So basically, we're asking the troop, who probably can't even afford the insurance coverage, let alone the copay. Now, in order to stay in the military, you must comply with the standard that the active component has, and this will cost you between $150 and $3,000. See you next year. The idea that a soldier or airman is going to elect to pay $3,000 is pretty much not going to happen. They're going to take the cheapest way out, and oftentimes will use community programs and things like that, and have to find low-cost care somewhere that they don't have to expend so much money out of their pocket. It's a significant burden on people. And, you know, we say airmen and soldiers, we're talking all ranks. We talk about the enlisted people not making as much money, upwards of E4, but we also have officers that up to 04, 05 are not making as much money as they could in the civilian world as well. If they're lucky enough and they have a civilian employment, and that employer provides for a significant portion of the cost of their insurance. Some employers cover quite a bit. Some employers have unlimited dental coverage. Some employers have 100% coverage, but most do not. Most offer upwards of $1,200 a year in annual maximum, in which case your preventive coverage would be at 100%, checkups, cleanings, x-rays. The typical coverage for basic care, root canals, fillings, would be around the 80%, so now you got a 20% copay on that. And then the coverage for advanced care, such as crowns, root canals, periodontal care, would typically be covered around the 50th percentile. But keep in mind, it's the 50th percentile up to the $1,200. So every bean counter in the civilian insurance industry knows that preventive care is cheap. That's why it's covered at 100%. If they're going to spend more than that few $100s for the year out of their own pockets, because remember, you gave them the money, now they're going to give it back to you, it's going to cost them more if you're not getting your checkups and cleanings, if you're not getting that routine care. They know it ahead of time. That's where they make their money. You don't spend it, they keep it. All right, so this is the same thing. We're asking our soldiers and airmen to use their money to buy insurance and then their money to do the copays. If we provide them for no-cost dental insurance and they're still responsible for the copays, and we encourage them to use 100% of the 100% part of their insurance, we benefit as a military. We benefit because they're more likely to seek care on a routine basis. We benefit because they're less likely to have an emergent care while deployed. That's a significant burden. It costs upwards of $200,000 just to fly somebody from an area of responsibility to an area where they can get care. We don't have combat dentists in the field. We have combat medics. We get you out of the field if you're injured. So Medevac is the way to do it. So it's a significant cost. And then for those people who are deployed in a central area of responsibility, those dentists that are there, you still have to get to them in order to get the treatment. We don't go to you in the field. So your soldier and your airman is now out of battle, disease non-battle injury, the DNBI that we talk about. DNBI is something that we discuss every day in the field. While on deployment, we need to know how many people are available and where are they at. And if it's DNBI, that's something that's preventable usually. So, I believe that readiness is the single biggest impact that we will receive from this. Increased readiness. When you talk 10 to 15 to 36% of our force not dentally available to us, that is a significant burden on us. We've trained them. We've equipped them to a standard that is unrivaled in this world. And now we're going to quibble over their dental readiness. So that number of people are now not available to us. The U.S. government spends a significant amount of money to keep our people in uniform. An administrative discharge will remove you for failure to comply. That concludes my briefing. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions following our first two speakers before we go on to the solution to all this? Colonel General Phillips.
So
There's a microphone if you'd like to use it, please.
Now I gotta turn it on.
I think it's already on.
Is it already on?
It's already on.
Okay, so many of us in this room already know that many healthcare providers balk at the notion of taking TRICARE workload. So if we ease and enlarge TRICARE benefits, does that address the problem of TRICARE not being welcome on many doorsteps?
Are you saying that there's not a lot of physicians that are taking TRICARE? Well, I'm sorry, I didn't understand the question.
I thought I heard you say that there are many dental providers don't necessarily want.
TRICARE is different than Rhrp.
Okay.
The TRICARE dental has got a different reimbursement rate than the Rhrp. So it would be similar to the other private dental coverages that many dentists do take.
More welcome.
Yes, I would say more welcome. Yes.
I do have a question. So I know when we were preparing for this panel, I'm Air Force Reserve, active duty, and so you forget about the fights fire and forget your medical readiness. When we were having these Zoom discussions and people were chiming in about the difference in the air guard and in the guard, difference in the air guard, difference in the air reserve, the reserves, and then a Navy difference. So what are those differences here, since I know we don't have the Marines and Navy here? Because it was very eye-opening, enlightening, and also confusing to learn that I think every service branch has something a little bit different on this.
And sadly, because we don't have the Navy or the Marine Corps here to be able to answer those questions, I'm not well versed in those nuances, but the difference is I don't believe that they actually do the RHRP program. And one of those services actually puts the full onus of the responsibility on the uniformed individual to make sure they maintain their own dental wellness. There is no program. But don't quote me as to which one. But that did come out in our preparatory conversations. So again, there is inequity across the RCs, the reserve components, in terms of how dental readiness is supported and encouraged, and some actually put more onus of responsibility on the individual to do it all on their own, whereas the Army Reserve and Guard uses the RHRP program as a mechanism, but again, it is not prevention. It is an annual exam. It doesn't do the cleanings. There's no cleanings involved in that. It is not the good oral health care that when those of us who have dental insurance go every 6 months, we get our teeth cleaned, they do x-rays, hama. That does not happen in the RHRP when they go. There's no cleaning. It's just an assessment. And I think that's really a key point to take away. If HR3512 is passed, then the onus would be on the service member. They would have the insurance, and they would go every 6 months, and they would get their teeth cleaned and do all those normal things that we expect would happen with good oral health care. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Jonathan, to talk a little bit more about the piece of legislation and the intent with it.
Sure, and I'll start with a couple of personal vignettes about dental readiness here. So to that point, I had a troop come up to me a couple of UTAs ago saying, "Sir, I don't understand Air Force dental." And I asked him, what don't you understand? And he pretty much said exactly what our panelist said. He went to go to see his dental checkup on base, and he asked, well, if there's something wrong with me, is there anything you can do about it? And they're like, no, it's on you. And they'll cut you loose. And what would happen if that troop didn't have health insurance or dental insurance? And just like the colonel said, it could be 3 to 5 years before anything ever gets done. You see it again, and that's not preventative, and that's not it's not healthy, and it's not good for the member. It's not good for the unit. And then the other story that I want to kind of bring up was, I was 2020, brand new to a unit. I was on remote orders working in Dallas, but my unit is in Las Vegas. And my commander calls me and says, you're coming up due for dental. You need to get a dental readiness or a dental checkup on base. And I go, well, we're in lockdown. I don't know how it is in Vegas. I'm in July of 2020. Like, we're really not supposed to be traveling. And they're like, well, this is a commander's priority. If you're going to go red on IMR, the commander's goal is to be sure that you're deployable. Let's also, I don't think I've said this, but my unit is a non-deployable unit. We teach fighter pilots how to do air maneuvers at red flag and all those weapons school support. And so a non-deployable unit is pushing deployment readiness on me, and they're forcing me to travel in the middle of a pandemic to get this done. So I complied, went there. I'm not authorized rental car, so I have out-of-pocket costs and travel costs as well. But this just hammers home to people who don't live this, that this is not a benefit, dental readiness. This is a requirement. And what you're deployable or you're out of the Air Force or the military. This is not something that we're asking for. Oh, you need to pay us a little bit more just so we can have all these nice things. No, it's required for us to be able to stay employed. And when it comes to talking about stuff like deployability, money shouldn't be. I don't want to say it should be a factor, but like if you want it, you should pay for it. I guess if it's a requirement, then it needs to be treated like a requirement, not some sort of add-on that is now on the onus of the member here. So that's why we're pushing HR3512. So when it comes to this piece of legislation, Representative Kim and Representative Kelly, I think Nate and Lauren can make it today, but they're the staffers for those members of Congress. But it would not change anything other than TRICARE Reserve Select is now cost-free for the member. Now, you would still pay premium if you had family, so it's not TRICARE Prime where everyone's just covered. But it at least streamlines and removes, again, the onus on the member to say, hey, you know what, I got to pay for this thing however much it costs, and it's my choice which insurance I'd like. This one says, hey, it's standardized. You will get this insurance. You will get care. You can access it at the regular intervals. And at least that hoop and barrier is removed from the member here. So it really is that simple. And that's what we're asking for. And I think our one pager says that the cost would only have a less than 3% increase in funding for the reserve component personnel accounts. So I think it's an easy argument to make. That not only is this needed, and that's pretty much it, it's needed.
One of the other advantages to this is that it will reduce some of the costs that one sees through the RHRP contracts. There will still be a need for some form of dental readiness assessment, but it will reduce some of the costs through RHRP. I don't believe it will actually end that contract, but that's not part of this legislation. But again, I know there would be some concern in some corners of the reserve components about what's going to happen to RHRP. That clearly needs to be examined. Maybe someone can ask CRS to do a study to take a look at that to see what the differences would be in terms of cost. The two other points I want to make, the Army now has new doctrine called health to fitness. And the Army is pushing this whole concept of physical fitness, spiritual fitness, mental, spiritual fitness. They have the new Army Combat Fitness Test. Well, dental readiness, dental fitness falls right into line with that new regulation for health to fitness. So it would make perfect sense to align this with that particular goal of Army H2F. The one thing we've been talking a lot here today about pre-deployment, but we've not talked about what happens currently when a soldier comes off of a set of orders or off of a deployment, and what happens in the immediate period of time when they come off deployment, and how might 3512 impact that redeployed period of time. So I don't know which of you want to discuss that, but I do think we need to talk about the redeployment period of time and what currently happens under TRICARE versus what happens under dental. Colonel Blum, do you want to take that?
So on the front end, we have the pre-deployment health build-up time. So prior to a deployment, a guardsman or reservist would be called to active duty and utilize that amount of time to catch up on all the medical standards, whatever has not been taken care of prior to this, and assess their overall health, dental and medical. Then during deployment, they're covered under the same program, which would mean if they're injured, disabled or whatever, it's all covered under that. And then post-deployment, they would be covered under TAMP. I believe it's a Transition Assistance Medical Program. And TAMP basically is the similar thing to the buildup for going on active duty, which could be 6 to 12 to 18 or 24 months of deployment. TAMP at the other end would then ease them into civilian society, taking care of anything that may have been missed during their time in the active component being activated. So TAMP is basically a stopgap measure, but then as soon as that 6 months is over, these people go back to their civilian employer, and then whatever their civilian employer was covering at that time is what they're going to go back to.
But it's a 6-month hard stop. So as soon as your 6 months are up, you're back out in the system. And so if you did not have any oral health care prior to, you're not going to come back to have any. So 3512 would alleviate that. The service member would then go right back into having TRICARE access as well as dental care access. And then the onus of responsibility would be on them. If an oral health care problem post-deployment doesn't show up in that 6 months, even if it's stemming from a deployment, that 6 months is up and you're out of Schlitz and you have to take care of it yourself. So again, it's a hard stop at 6 months, and some problems may not be that readily apparent in that first 6 months post-deployment.
Yeah, I might throw a small curveball. This is definitely a Jonathan problem, but when I was on TAMP after I got out of active duty, I needed some dental work done. I went in, and the dentists were like, I don't know if we can actually do anything on this. Like, we can help, but depending on the nature of what we find, if you need additional work, this may come out of pocket. We have to refer you somewhere else. And I was kind of living transition, not anywhere close to where I was settled, so I didn't have a dentist or anything. And so it was really worrisome to be like, okay, so I'm on TAMP now, and I have an issue, and you're telling me that it may not even be covered by military dentists while I'm here. And I think those are other issues that, that TRICARE Reserve Select, having that already covered, would be able to alleviate that kind of a weirdo strain. So,
Yes, Commander.
Brad Carlson, Lieutenant Commander, United States Naval Reserves. You're talking a lot about preventative care, and I think Colonel Blum, you said preventative care is typically 100% no cost to all of us, and so by being preventative, we would reduce the costs associated downstream dental 3-4 correction, and so it would seem like this is a money saver, not a money spender. So I'm curious about the opposition and why there's opposition to this.
I don't know yet that we have any opposition to 3512. I think there needs to be more conversations inside the Pentagon on what this means to the RHRP contract. But I think those are conversations that can happen on the Hill. Yes.
Hello, my name is Mark Holland. I'm with the Association of United States Army. General Phillips, thank you very much for sponsoring this very important discussion today. I'm anticipating there's going to be a direct cost to the Defense Health Program to implement this for the Guard and Reserve. But the challenge is going to be to me, there's got to be, as you just mentioned, a considerable cost savings. So it's direct cost versus validating a cost savings out there. I've heard there's a study that's ongoing, but I'm not sure. But from AUSA's perspective, this is like no-brainer legislation in that it helps with recruiting, it helps with retention, it helps with individual readiness, and it helps with unit readiness. And so that's all cost savings for the DoD. And then there's the employer benefit to this too, particularly for the small businesses, because it takes that burden off them. And we have a concern in our country for enough small businesses hiring Guard and Reserve. So there's that benefit too. So again, AUSA is in full support of the legislation. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but when I read the legislation, I think it is both dental and health. Is that correct? And just I'll make one comment about dentists in the reserve. My dentist, until he retired from private practice, was Major General retired Ron Silverman. You may have heard the name. A great dentist, but also a great American, if you ever met him. Thank you.
Yes, I know General Silverman, so it's a small army.
In what you're saying about the cost savings, the pandemic is a perfect example of what happens when you don't do dental care for a couple of years. So my office closed down during the pandemic for several months, and I had some patients, not military necessarily, but I had regular patients that didn't come to my office for about a year and a half. And the amount of dental care that I'm now faced with for them just not coming in and getting problems taken care of right away, and people who had not gotten dental care through the pandemic, is astonishing. I don't know what actual numbers are because, we haven't done studies on this, so this is kind of anecdotal, but if this is just happening with a small pandemic, what about these young soldiers who are not getting dental care on a regular basis? So ultimately, prevention is going to be very large cost savings for the U.S. government, because we're going to have less people. I mean, we all, well, at least the dentists know this. You know, you'd get preventative care. We're giving you fluoride treatments. We're teaching you about what not to eat to help your teeth. We're showing you how to brush your teeth so you're getting out the particles the correct way. I mean, we are the kings and queens of prevention. And this program would allow soldiers, because now they know, if nothing else for that dental insurance, they're going to get their cleanings twice a year. They're going to get their full set of x-rays once every 3 to 5 years and bite wings every year. And they're going to be able to take care of problems. So a little filling, so 20% out of cost for a little filling may be anywhere under $100. But, you know, we're not going to get to that root canal, which is going to run them $1,500, and the crown that's going to run them another. And if you have a cap, which most people do, you're already out of the cap by the time you finish the root canal. So if we can prevent it by just doing the little filling and having them come in twice a year and preventing big problems, it'll be a big cost savings.
Thank you. Have we another question from the audience? We do have a mic in the room. Thank you.
Good afternoon or good morning, whichever it is. My name is Levi Sauter with NCOA, Non-Commissioned Officers Association. So we've discussed a lot about costs, and I understand that that's an issue, but something that you had brought up, ma'am, earlier is the issue of how does a person or figure out where they should go? In other words, you were saying that it takes approximately a year for this person that you want to get fixed, you know, to clean their teeth, to have their filling done, to have their crown done. However, what's the solution there? Because we're talking about a lot more money, but what about the network that you're saying where it seems like there's also, even if we get the money, there's still going to be those issues of where do we send the soldier, where do we send that service member, and where do they get the care once they do have the money? How do we resolve those issues?
So currently through the Rhrp program, it's very limited in what they serve. If they have regular dental insurance, things are covered at a higher rate. And there's a larger network of dentists that are accepting private insurance. So it'll be easier to come by, it'll be easier to find, and it'll be less cost to the soldier overall.
That's my question. Thank you.
Yeah, they would just find a local dentist that takes the insurance that lives near where they live. We would not, the military would not have the responsibility to help them find a provider unless they have never done that before and they need some guidance on how do I take a look at the website and see what kind of insurance they take and are they in my plan. But it would be an individual choice as to which dentist they see if HR3512 is passed and they have TRICARE Reserve medical and dental care.
So with that, just to piggyback off of that, when she said that, hey, I have a dentist right in my office, but they're sending that soldier, they're sending that service member 40 miles away, why are they doing that? Is that an obsolete program that's running that, or is that just incompetence by the...
I would not paint it as incompetence or obsolete. It's just the nature of the contracted and the contract that our HRP has. So it's a contracting issue.
Thank you.
Do we have any other questions from the audience?
There's an online question.
Mm-hmm.
With dental readiness being so important, what's the impact of dental readiness or poor dental readiness to the rest of your health care?
I'll let the dentist handle this one.
As I mentioned before, the Surgeon General said, if you don't have dental health, you don't have health. I can give you a number of stories of things that I've found. People will more often go to a dentist more frequently than they'll go to their own physicians. I have found skin cancer on patients. I actually take blood pressure on all my patients. 2-3 of my patients were on the road for heart attacks. I sent them they had blood pressures of 200 over 150. And I sent them immediately to their physician, and the physician called me and they're like, you saved this person's life, because now I'm putting them on antihypertensives, and you know, if they didn't, and this person had not been to a doctor in years. I can tell you, I've found skin cancer on my own brother on his face, and I sent him, and they were shocked that, you know, we are very knowledgeable of this area and the whole body. And diabetes, we can see diabetes in the mouth and some issues with the mouth. I'm sure Colonel Blum can give you other examples. You are not healthy if you don't have dental health.
I think the main issue here is access to care. Access to care for the active component is local, it's within their base, it's within a travel commitment that is very reasonable. Guard and Reserve do not serve on the base on a daily basis. We often travel upwards of hundreds of miles, thousands of miles. We have people that come from across the country for drill weekends. So in addition to all of that, we're actually allowing them to have the dental insurance itself at no cost. There would still be copays, but the dental insurance itself at no cost that they would access from their local neighborhood. The way that the active component works with their MTF, the medical treatment facility, or the dental treatment facility, it's called empanelment. So the population that is empaneled to a certain MTF is the population at risk. The population at risk contains the active component. It does not include guardsmen and reservists. If a guardsman or reservist is called to active duty, that entire company or wing or flight is now an empaneled member. The staffing in the MTF and the DTF come from that population of at risk before the guardsmen showed up on base. Okay, so now the guardsmen show up, and oftentimes in the numbers of thousands, show up, and now they're increasing the number of people that is a population at risk. There is no way to staff that base for that population at risk, and now we have to parse out the care. The active component will then start parsing it out to the local neighborhoods at first because they will not have the staffing to take care of that population at risk, hitting them all at once.
Another question from the field?
Another from online. Can the panel more fully address the total cost of HR 3512 for all components? If the top line does not increase, what doesn't get paid for in lieu of this?
That's a question for you, Jonathan.
That's me, and I would have to get back to you on that one. Thanks.
But that is an excellent question because, again, as we all know, everything on the Hill is all about dollars, and if you add something, something else has to go away. And so a CBO may need to take a look at this. Maybe CRS could do a study with CBO, but there does need to be a cost analysis done. Good point.
Corey Titus with the Military Officers Association. So speaking of costs, there's obviously the benefit to this. Do you have any estimates about the overall impact on medical readiness, both for dental or just general health?
Can you ask that question a little bit more
Yeah,
clearly?
so I think the figure showed the 130,000 members without dental coverage. So do we have any idea about what kind of effect this would have? Do you think, I mean, it sounds like it would be a fair comparison to at least estimate that this would bring the reserve components dental readiness down to around the level of the active component. Just would that be like how many tens of thousands of people is that? Do we have any idea about the impact there?
Yes, I think the point is it's inching closer towards parity with active duty. So when you're making insurance available to everyone at no cost, then you would likely have people going to see their providers more frequently and hopefully as frequently as required by the active duty. So they'd be able to catch those dental issues more frequently, and so yes, that would drive down. I mean, would it be 100% dental readiness? Probably not, but the whole point is if it's zero cost to the member, they're going to do it, and it's a requirement. Then they have to go see someone. They have to have someone monitoring this, and so that would definitely drive down the readiness level 3 stuff.
I think the one pager shows the stats from 2010. That's the only publicly available data we were able to access, and so it shows a 90% dental readiness on the part of the active component and 10% unready. Our thoughts are that this would move the reserve components closer to that standard or that benchmark, if you want to call that a benchmark.
Absolutely, I mean that's tens of thousands, if not hundreds.
And also you have to remember if you have dental insurance and you know your dentist who's only 2 miles away accepts that insurance, you're more likely to go regularly to them rather than, well, I can go once a year and the only place they're sending me is 40 miles away. And in some states, and I have talked with other commanders in different states, they say the closest person was the next state over. So it's, if you had dental insurance, and most dentists do accept dental insurance. So, I mean, it's very few dentists that are just only fee for service and nothing else. Most of them do accept some sort of insurance. So the likelihood that you'd have a dentist in your neck of the woods and you could be dentally ready, you could at least have that exam done, and then it would reduce the numbers that we're having. I feel it's just a win-win altogether.
And I would say kind of the vignette would be, if you're active duty, you go in for your annual checkup, they say, hey, get something wrong, and then they schedule you right there. That's active duty. Now, just like with my troop, who got an exam, let's say something negative would happen to him, now we have questions. Is he insured? If he's not, then how are we supposed to fix this? And then there's all these downstream effects. If we had HR3512 pass, then the dentist would say, I still can't treat you, but you need to go to your dentist's office and get this looked at. And it's not really a burden because they don't have to have any costs to go call their dentist up and say, hey, someone else saw this. It'd be kind of strange because if they're already seeing the dentist, then it'd probably be already identified. But in that kind of scenario there where the military says this isn't up to military standards, then they can get it fixed without any other questions.
One final question.
General Wilmoth, you may have just answered my question, so forgive me if this is redundant. I wasn't listening carefully enough, I guess, when I was getting up. Do we have a metric between the active component, the reserve, and the guard in terms of the amount of service members or the percent of service members who are not ready due to dental? I was just wondering if that would be something we could use as a talking point on the Hill, that this is the benefits you get, that we're going to go from X percent of not ready to at least up to this percent like that.
I think we need to work on getting that kind of data. That's a little bit, we've had some troubles getting access to some of those data. But I think we need to work more closely with our command dental surgeons and try to get that data for each RC. But we had trouble getting that for today.
It is less. It just is less than the active component.
Yeah.
It is less.
But I would also say that the deployed commanders have a significant amount of data that can tell you what the DNBIs were for various deployments. They track all of this stuff. Access to care in theater is tracked to the minutest detail. And the one thing that they track the most is the number of times they have to fly somebody out for that. Over.
Hi, I'm Jay Hurst. I'm an Army Reserve officer and a defense fellow. And it sounds like this bill will do a lot to improve our medical readiness in the selective reserve. Do you have any thoughts about what we could do to improve our readiness in the IRR?
That's an excellent question. And for now, I don't believe they have access to TRS.
They don't.
And I think that you pose a very important, larger question. But because they are not, they're in the IR, individual ready reserve, for those who don't know what that means, then they're not actually getting drill pay, and the billing of that would be quite difficult. So that may be due for follow-on legislation once we get this passed. Follow-on conversations.
And if I can ask one more. Jonathan, do you know what the cost of TRS is right now? I understand the government subsidizes like 72% of the cost of the program.
Right. So for the individual, I think I pay like $44 for my health, and then you can choose to add on dental, and I think it's around like $6 to $15, something like that.
Do you know what that whole number is, though, to fund the entire TS program?
I'll look it up. I think I have that number.
Thanks.
I do know years ago when I was working in OSD Health Affairs, they had only budgeted for X number of member lives. And so this would have to be a serious conversation about how to expand the numbers of covered lives. So there are further discussions that have to take place in terms of expanding TRS for this purpose.
Thank you.
You raised a good point. Thank you. Any other final questions? Well, if not, I want to thank everybody for participating today, and I hope we've answered some of your early questions about HR 3512. Clearly, we have some more do-outs in terms of cost-benefit analysis and better benchmarking. I want to thank those of you who are watching this online and streaming it from ROA headquarters. We're glad to have you here, and we look forward to having everybody at our next Reserve Education Forum. Thank you all very, very much for your participation today. Have a great day.